Before we get started, this episode was brought to you by the generous donations of my patrons, Dr. Lockdown Reviews and Quartz Rules, as well as the various eBay sales that I have made on my eBay page. If you're interested in supporting me on either, links to both of them will be in the description.
Read the disclaimer. Doofus. And please contact us through this email address with questions or fan art. Thank you for your support.
Welcome to 2021, everyone! I was beginning to think that we'd never make it. Yeah, also, I apologize for the especially horrendous state of my desk and shelves right now, but I've had to sell like over a dozen figures in the past week just to make sure that I'd have enough money to cover the expenses of collecting the current line that's going on. By which I, of course, mean I'm trying to chase clout again like a loser. And where better to go than with a figure that is so new that it isn't at most general retailers. Salutations, denizens of the internet. I'm Firebite27, and let us commence our analysis of Transformers Generations War for Cybertron Kingdom Deluxe Class Cheetor.
We open in darkness because it is an uncertain time in the Transformers community.
And totally not because I didn't think of an original way to open up the story with a bit of dramatic flair to it.
After a fairly mediocre start to the trilogy and an amazing middle chapter, Hasbro fails spectacularly with the delivery of the final chapter of their Prime Wars trilogy, as the power of the Primes line fails to live up to the quality of Titan's return. It is 2018! Fortunately, due to the fact that Firebite did not get a debit card at this time, he missed out on the majority of the figures released during Power of the Primes. Even in spite of this, he still managed to start a YouTube channel. Don't go back and watch any of the videos from that time period. They haven't aged well. In the midst of this G1-fueled shit show, Firebite27 and the rest of the Transformers community are given a glimpse of what lurks on the horizon in 2019. The War for Cybertron trilogy, Siege!
Okay, by this point, I think you've all had your fill of me using the echo filter, so I'm going to drop that and all of the dramatic pretense with what follows. I, of course, had several theories upon the announcement of this line. The biggest one being that the first part would focus on Cybertronian alt modes, the second part would focus on, like, another part of the franchise, like, say, the Unicron trilogy, and then the third part of the trilogy would focus on Beast Wars. Then the moment Earthrise was revealed, the parts of my brain that were hoping for Beast Wars figures went, "We're all gonna die!" Then, of course, I had to endure the 12 absolutely agonizing months in which Earthrise was available, enduring all of its shoddy QC, and the messed up distribution that would make Mr. Krabs look like a patron saint of generosity. And that's before we factor in the tiny detail that Earthrise also physically killed my ability to feel hype for new releases. Everywhere I looked, it was just parts forming, bad engineering, parts forming, and parts forming, and parts forming, and parts forming. I've said before that I do not hate parts forming, but I do have a limit to how much parts forming I can take before I start screaming at my computer. And I wasn't mad at the concept of parts forming itself. I was mad because the engineers were using the part form as an excuse for bad design. They were trying to make shortcuts instead of making puzzles. I know that we don't often think of it as collectors, but Transformers are a 3-in-1 toy. They're a cool action figure, which is the robot mode, an animal or a vehicle toy, which is the alternate mode, or modes, and then they are also a puzzle, the process of getting in between those two modes. And if you just have to tear off a chunk of the vehicle in order to get it from one mode to another, that doesn't come across as an interesting step or a thing that you have to figure out if you're a kid. it comes across as an excuse for not doing something clever. And putting it that way, I hope you can see my point on why Earthrise was so underwhelming when compared to Siege. Then, in September of 2020, something amazing happened. Something I had never envisioned occurring in a billion years. Something primal. Something rearing its sharp claws and gnashing its razor teeth. And it was, in a word, glorious.
Oh my God!
I am having a heart attack!
I'm flossing ironically, and I love it.
Yes!
In case that weird-ass montage didn't let you know already, I was incredibly hyped for Kingdom's release. But that begs the question, was it worth the wait? Was the build-up actually leading to a satisfactory conclusion? Well, in Cheetah Mode, I can safely say that this is the most impressed I've ever been with a Beast Mode, despite its size. Starting off with positives, the sculpting of the fur texture is utterly amazing. I've actually caught myself stroking this cat a few times. Not an innuendo, I've actually petted it like a real-life cat sometimes. I am a fucking weirdo. And the spotted texture on said fur sculpting is expertly printed. Like, I'd imagine with a bunch of spots and tiny details like this, that the printing technology would lead to at least 1 or 2 errors and paint mishaps, but nope. Turns out they're work about as well as you'd expect. And the Beast Mode's articulation, just forget about it. But I'm gonna let Maya talk about that since that's her shtick.
The Cheetah Mode features a ball joint at the shoulders of the forelegs that allows them to spread. The thigh swivel from Robot Mode also allows the hind legs to spread as well. The shoulders of the forelegs are also in a rotation that allows them to spin in a full circle. The hind legs can also bend backwards, but not forwards. The bottom half of the forelegs can bend forward and backwards about 30 degrees in either direction, while the hind legs have no backwards bend, but bend all of the way moving forward. The head features an opening jaw but no rotation, and the tail is also unarticulated. However, it does have a stand port for dynamic running poses and ball-jointed paws.
And now I'd like to draw your attention back to the Cheetah Mode's jaw, because it is an element of the articulation that I find noteworthy. And more so, the fact that the transformation into Robot Mode necessitated that this jaw open to a comically wide angle. And when I see how wide this jaw opens, the only thing that comes to mind is a line from Phaelus's review of the Beast Wars cartoon.
Stupid surprise cheetahs!
But yes, the articulation of the Beast Mode is incredible, and it allows me to recreate a wide variety of cat memes. But that's besides the point. My point is that in terms of paint, sculpting, proportions, and articulation, the Cheetah Mode is nearly flawless. And when it comes to the negative as well, I think there's no better place to start than by tackling them head-on with, well, the Cheetah Mode's head. The sculpt of the head itself is not the problem, it's how they painted the eyes. More specifically, the fact that they left out any semblance of pupils. Of course, I'd be more forgiving of this design choice if it was on a robotic cheetah alternate mode, but it isn't. And the reason why that's a big problem is because a lack of pupils makes it look like either A, it's possessed and needs to have an exorcist deal with it, or B, it looks like a Funko Pop. Neither of which is ideal. Though the first one might be a potential reference to the Beast Machine's Supreme class Cheetor. Why any of the designers would try to homage that piece of garbage is beyond me.
I'm not sure how they did it, but it looks like he's screaming in agony even when his jaw is closed.
Also, I'd feel like a complete idiot if I neglected to mention how, atrocious the kibble management on the beast mode is. The most prominent examples are these patches of baby blue that run everywhere on the Cheetah mode. It's almost like there's no escaping them, whether you look at it from above, from the side, or from below. And if it were just painted kibble, then I could just remove it with some rubbing alcohol or something, no problem. But the real issue is that there's also molded kibble, such as these spikes. And while I could sand them off, I really don't want to. I also have several problems with the hind legs in terms of transformation, but let's get into that after I've done the size comparisons. Here's Cheetor in Cheetah Mode next to Titan's Return Wolfwire. It's just every time I have these two in Beast Mode on camera. The last figure with a Beast alternate mode that I reviewed, Beastbox 10 Space Anthem. The last Beast Wars character I reviewed, Retrax. The other half of the Big Bad Toy Store order that included Cheetor, Generation Select's Rotor Storm. The last figure I will hopefully ever get from the previous toy line, Earthrise Thrust, Standard Qtama, Standard Can of Sparkling Water, and Fraudside. So overall, I'd say that this Beast Mode is as close to perfect as the price point will allow it to be. It's a good figure with great articulation in the Beast Mode, might even be more than the Masterpiece version. So overall, yeah, I'd say that this Beast Mode is great. However, the well-proportioned Beast Mode leads to some similar issues to those present in the Universe Cheetor. Also, here's a really cursed incomplete transformation of Cheetor. Do not let him has cheeseburger.
Into the sea, you and me, all the years and no one heard. I'll show you in spring, it's a
I have never been a big fan of this robot mode. Ever since the renders first popped up, I have not been a fan of how this robot mode looks. Especially not its legs or its wings. The arms, those are fine. Same with the head. The inaccurate kibble wings, I can deal with that too. Though they do have some nice sculpted detail on the inside to align with themselves with the show. But when we get to the legs, it's like, okay, did they just give up on engineering a solution to this? Cause I think I've got an easier and cleaner solution for getting this kibble out of the way, and that is folding it into the legs and having it fill them in from the other side. And not only would that have gotten the cheetah legs out of the equation altogether, it would have probably allowed the robot mode feet to fill in the backs of the calves of the Cheetah Mode's hind legs. And who knows, maybe at one point during the prototyping phase for this figure, maybe that would have been the reality of the situation. We often forget that the prototype for figures often starts off a bit better than the final product because the designers have to work their way backwards in order to ensure that it fits in the budget. And often for the better in my mind, because limitation is like the budget, breed creative thinking and solutions to problems. Also, I didn't include this in the initial recordings for this section, but while Kingdom's QC has generally been far better than Earthrise's QC, one of the feet is very difficult to push in to the upper leg for Cheetah Mode. And then we get to the weapon. Oh boy.
Okay, real talk, is this a weapon or is it just H.P. Lovecraft's back scratcher?
If it's an axe, then it has a problem since it can't be held in a manner which would be ideal to strike your enemy with. And if it was a flail, then that still rings true. Also, it has very tiny feet. It might be a bit of a pain in the butt to balance if you don't know what you're doing, but take your time, and you will get there. Speaking of balance, let's talk about one of the good parts of this robot mode, the articulation.
Head is on a ball joint for looking left, right and up, shoulders can rotate, and are on butterfly joints to allow him to reach forward, but that does come at the cost of the kibble flaps getting in the way of backwards movement. Waist swivels, legs can't move backwards for shit, but can kick forwards and outwards. Thighs swivel, knees bend forwards and backwards, and ankles can pivot. The biceps and wrists swivel, and the elbow bends.
The overall articulation of the figure is good, but it doesn't look any good. And I think that's mostly because of the blue they used. The colors are an issue that I and many others like me have had with this figure. in that we don't understand why they went with baby blue instead of a darker shade. Heck, I would have gone with like a turquoise or aqua color instead of whatever this is. And while I do think that he is mostly a superior figure to Wolfwire, I do think that if Cheetor had used Wolfwire's color palette, then maybe it would look a lot better. I'm also quite fond of the face. I don't know why, I think it's just something about its smug aura mocking me. Anyways, here is Kingdom Cheetor next to Titan's Return Wolfwire, Space Anthem, Beast Wars Retracts, Rotor Storm, Earthrise Thrust, a standard Qtama, and Broadside.
Coming up with a final score for this figure has been a bit of a nightmare because for as much as I want to recommend it, I am at the same time painfully aware of the fact that it's not extremely good, it's just really average. Though I only have myself to blame since these problems only arose after I started giving the score system a rigid definition, but I want to recommend it highly so that Hasbro will see, when this figure sells well, that there are more segments of the Transformers franchise other than G1 that are profitable. And so I honestly have to give this figure a rating of a 9 out of 10. Yeah, it's a good figure. I'd recommend it to beginner fans or beginner collectors. It's a solid figure, but it's not perfect. So with that being said, this is Firebite27 over and out. And don't forget to brace yourselves, everyone, because Kingdom is coming. Get it? The joke is that I haven't seen Game of Thrones.